Hey, what's up YouTube? I'm Tracie Franklin, Glenfiddich Ambassador for the East Coast of the US.
And I'm Sniff from ScotchNSniff. That's why you're here. And today we're going to be talking about how to taste whiskey like a professional. It's not every day that you have somebody who's like super pro and teaches people to taste whiskey all the time. And like obviously you're here on ScotchNSniff.com or YouTube.com/ScotchNSniff because you're here to learn how to taste whiskey a little better. And we've definitely done a video before where we showed you guys like, oh, if you're a beginner, totally starting from nothing, tasting whiskey, here's how you can do it. But say you've been tasting whiskey a little while and you want some better tips and tricks to get even more of the flavors out of it. We're bringing in, the professionals.
Well, I do taste whiskey often. One of the things I want for you to consider is whether or not you're tasting it to actually, are you going to be writing a review? Are you really trying to get deep into that whiskey? Or do you just want an overview of what that whiskey is and then you're going to just sit with your friends and have a good time? Because if it's not that serious, don't do all of this. This is really for when you want to sit down and write a review and then maybe go and argue with your friends about what flavors you got.
literally fist fight your friends.
I didn't say fist fight your friends.
No violence. It tastes like
violence.
cherry. Okay.
No. So, one of the things that I actually really like to do when I have a whiskey, so I will pour it out and I will immediately nose it. When you're nosing, do be careful, especially if you don't know the exact proof of what you're going to be nosing. Maybe you're doing a blind tasting or something. Slowly lift that glass to your nose until you can detect some aromas. Also, make sure when you are nosing to keep your mouth open. You're allowing the vapors to mix with oxygen within your palate, so all of that retronasal will be very, very active. So I can get fairly close with this one. So I would actually just spend some time nosing.
Oh, I didn't know how slow you wanted to do it.
It's totally up to you. It's just how fearful you are of your whiskey. I'm not very afraid. I'm brave. I don't know about you, Sniff. How are you?
I know this whiskey, so it's like...
I understand.
You
right.
don't have to be nervous.
We both know our
it's not like
whiskeys.
some kind of dog, like, I'm feeling out this dog to see if it's angry. It's like, no, this is...
Yes, we are both familiar with what we're drinking right now.
Oh
so I would gently raise it up to my nose until I can detect it. I would take a deep breath. What I actually one of the things I enjoy doing is, if I'm farther away, you can go ahead and inhale through your nose. So you want to try and keep your mouth open just a little bit to allow that to mix together. You can also tilt your glass and then you'll raise it up and down because there's going to actually be different aromas, different chemicals evaporate at different parts in your glass. So there's going to be a different smell at the bottom of your glass versus the top of your glass.
Why is that?
Because they literally have different chemical weights.
And so that actually, it actually is weight that is carryable through the air. So because of that, they actually are...
Yeah.
Because you always see these glasses like this, or like you see the neat glass that swears that the ethanol will pour out of the sides.
Right. And then only the actual aromas
will go in the center. And I'm always like, how is this the case?
So that is what it is.
If they've got different weights, that makes sense. Because as you go from the outsides of the glass where it's going to weigh the most, it's going to come down on the glass and stuff in the middle. Huh, it makes sense.
Yeah,
it's legit.
We like it. So we'll nose. Nosing is important. I will actually, after that, I will probably just let it sit. I might take one sip and do that then, but I actually like to see what happens just as it sits in the oxygen.
You just watch it?
I like to just let it sit for about 20 minutes. No, I'll probably go and pour something else that I had. No, I'll probably just go drink some water. Just do things. Just let it sit for a while. I feel like it opens up. Some of the more volatile aromas are going to be released. So the ones that are going to be a little bit more astringent may be released. And when you come back, you usually will notice quite a bit of difference.
Call it breathing, right?
Yes, we're letting our whiskey breathe. Yes. I could have said that too, but I didn't know if you wanted me to be fancy about it.
I don't know. It's up to you.
And then we're just going to nose it again. You would do the exact same things.
It's been 20 minutes already.
So fast. One of the other tricks I like to do is I'll put the actual, if I've already done my nosing, I know it's not going to burn my nostril, because that actually can happen. It's just, if it's too high of a proof, you can actually burn some of those sensors. I will put it all the way up to my nose and actually breathe in through my mouth, not breathe in through my nose. And it actually, the way that it kind of suctions all of that aroma in, I definitely feel like I get a deeper sense of what is in my glass. So, to my nose, breathe in through my mouth.
My dog is going
Hi,
crazy.
Pop.
This is a hey.
So that's what I'm doing. That's how we get in. So now we're going to taste.
Oh,
you
sorry.
ready?
My dog's going crazy.
Dog is running around.
This is like a first. I don't know what's gone into her. She's being weird.
Uh-oh.
Maybe she smells the whiskey.
Teeny tiny sip. I usually will take a tiny sip, let it sit on my palate, let it roll it around my mouth. Everything should start to tingle a little bit, especially if it's the first bit of alcohol you've had today. What that's doing is just kind of wiping your palate clean, preparing it for the alcohol that's coming in, letting it get used to that proof.
So it's like a primer sip.
Exactly, a primer sip. I definitely tell people as soon as your mouth starts to water, swallow that down. Don't think about taste, because you're just going to go in for another one. That second sip is actually going to feel much more flavorful than that first one. So
It's like putting paint on a wall. Like you want a primer first, and then you want to put the paint on. You don't put paint on immediately because whatever was going on before is actually going to go through the paint. So it's kind of the same thing for your palate. Like whatever you were eating or tasting before is actually going to carry through more than the actual whiskey is going to. That's interesting. Is it good?
It's tasty. I do so like to also let this sit in my palate, sit on my tongue, and then kind of move it around my mouth. You've probably often heard of the bourbon chew.
Chewy? Yep.
So we can do that as well. It's just moving it around into different places in your mouth, really just coating everything with that spirit. You'll have different flavors appear throughout your palate. So you're going to note first, like, what's on the front of my palate? What's tingling? Is the tip of my tongue tingling? Is there a spice that I'm detecting there? Then go to the middle of your palate. What's happening there? What are the sensations? What's happening in the back of my palate? Is it still there? Is it still lingering? What happens as I breathe out? Is there an aroma or a flavor that's happening as I'm breathing out? Now, one of the things that I love to do, and that kind of is just my thing, I don't know how other people do it, but what I found that what I'm doing when I'm looking for flavors, my brain kind of works like a Rolodex. So as I'm sitting, as it's in my mouth, and I'm just thinking through, I just think of sugars, and then I spin through all the sugars, types of sugars, white sugars, brown, you know?
So because you're close to my age, you're literally making me think of all the people who are like younger. Say you're 21 and you're just getting into whiskey and you're watching a ScotchNSniff video. You say Rolodex, but they're going to be like, what?
It's true. I know it because my dad works in an office. He still has a Rolodex on his desk. Like I've seen one forever. So Rolodex, I think they're for business cards.
Generally, yeah.
Okay.
That's what they used to be for.
Okay, I think I'm.
It's like
sure.
business card business information. You just roll.
It's just
through
this
it.
rolly thing and things, and then you can pop up the one you want. So the way that my brain is kind of working is I'm going through the types of sugars, the caramel, the toffee, and then as I detect that kind of highlights or pops up that word. In my brain will be like, that's exactly what this is. So I'll go through sugars. I'll go through fruits. I'll go through within the fruits. Is it a fresh fruit? Is it a cooked fruit? Is it a ripe or underripe? I will go through vegetables and herbs and woods. So you have a huge span of different flavors that you can detect within your whiskeys. And that's kind of how I do it. As I'm thinking about it, it will refine and point me right towards that.
Right, because you can say that,
flavor.
this smells like sherry, but then you can kind of refine like what type of sherry it smells like. Or a lot of people say sugar and they say raw sugar. Well, there's so many different kinds. Turbinado, Demerara, like there are so many different kinds. Yeah. So I think part of that is really getting into education of like different kinds of flavors too. That really helps.
For sure. I definitely recommend go home and smell your spices. Go home, really smell your, like when you're cooking, always smell that spice before you throw it into your pan. So if it's calling for oregano and basil and thyme, make sure that you know the difference between those, even if you weren't looking, by the nose. I mean, that's only going to build your smell, your vocabulary. Yeah.
Your smell vocabulary. Yeah. Your olfactory vocabulary?
Your olfactory. Yeah, I wasn't, yes.
I don't know. Is there a name for this?
That's a very
There's got to be a name, right? Because like it's the most powerful of all the senses. Mm-hmm. Nobody's named what they call the memory.
This, like of your senses.
Oh, we need to give it a name.
There might be a name.
There probably is. There probably is some scientific name, but I feel like there should be
of what it is right now.
There should be like a layman's term name.
Well, we could create the layman's term if you wanted to.
So we'll let people do it. So if you're watching this far in the video, just comment down below. Be like, hey, this is a good name for olfactory memory. Yeah. Or olfactory memory names. It's weird.
I feel like there is, and that's driving me crazy. I feel like I actually know it.
Oh, you just forgotten it?
Yeah, I feel like, but please remind me if you do know the actual scientific word, because it's gonna annoy the crap out of me.
Oh man, I didn't even know there was a word, so it's gonna just educate me.
I'm positive there is.
That's exciting.
Positive. So what else do you want to know? Oh, so water.
Next up.
We're talking about water. I mean, we're tasting, so we're chewing, we're doing all of those things. We're basically running through different flavor components that could be a part of it. And water. This has been
a giant thing. As of late, there was that article that was published where everybody's like, oh, you're tasting your whiskey wrong if you're not adding water. Right. And so everyone has been screaming to add water lately. Right.
But we've been screaming to add water for a long time. Yeah. So people are just now listening. In Scotland, they give you a little pitcher of water with all of your whiskeys. So it's never been something that has been frowned upon. It's only been here in the States where we have put whiskey on this pedestal, especially Scotch whiskey, where we're looking at these things that have ages of 12 to begin with. Yeah. Whereas with bourbons, you're looking at no age statements, 4 years, 8 years, 10 years. So it seemed like, well, this must be much more special. Not necessarily. It just takes that much more time for it to actually impart all the flavor it needs to be the quality of product that we want. So our 12 years still like, what you want to use with your bourbons when you put it on an ice cube. We're okay with that. That's not going to make anyone frown. That's actually going to make all of our people who work at our distillery very happy because they're going to have a job. So everyone in Ducktown is like, yay, drink more Glenfiddich on however you want it.
That's what it takes for you to like it.
Yes. So we're actually gonna though add the water because we want to break apart the little. So within this, you're gonna have little clusters of chemicals that are gonna be hydrophobic. So that means they don't like the water. So they're in these little clusters of flavor, and you can't really detect them very well because they're sticking together because they don't like the water. So if we add a touch of water, they break apart, and you're gonna all of a sudden they're gonna be there and apparent. Now this is a permanent change. You can't take the water out. So I do caution, if you are trying this, again, for notes or things to go and compare with your friends, if you add a huge ton of it, you've stepped kind of the incremental changes that can occur within your whiskey. So honestly, 1 to 2 drops does make a difference, and just continue to do that until you think that it's at a point that you're happy with. I wouldn't go further than 2 to 1. If you are
2 to 1 water to whiskey? Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a lot of
No,
water.
2 to 1 whiskey, yeah. So like, yeah. Yeah, sorry. No, that would be a lot.
That'd be a lot.
But that's about what they're nosing at. So that's about what
because they nose at 20%, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's about
that's
half.
about what you're nosing at when you're at the distillery and trying to figure out what flavors are in there before you actually drink it.
Yeah, so in terms of tasting, the actual tasting process and going through that's fantastic, and that definitely helps. I'm sure a lot of people will start adding water to make sure that works out that way. Mm-hmm. What about some weird tips? Like before, I know that you have recommended things like smelling your own elbow because it gives you a good idea of like, I guess that's the smell of you, and so you know.
So it's just resetting your palate. Yeah, so I do recommend just right into that crook of your arm. Usually you don't put any scents there. You don't put perfumes or things. If you have a scented lotion, that might do it. I would also, especially when you're doing tastings, not wear perfumes or scented lotions. You want it to be as clean as possible. What are some other weird things? I
don't know. You made me think about people who might put lotion in their elbows, though.
I mean, you do when you like are, but usually not scented. It's just that morning thing.
Where do you put your perfume? Ashy. I only put it in my elbows.
There are probably people that have sweaty elbows.
I'm going to start selling elbow perfume now.
Or deodorant. Like maybe just be a cream. It's like the cream.
Oh
all right. I think that people are probably good with us. So make sure, add water, taste. Nosing, super, super important. You're getting about 80 to 90% of all of your flavor from that nosing. So take a lot of time to do that. Water is to whiskey what oxygen is to wine. Use your water. And then, once you're done and you got all your tastes and your flavors and your profiles, do whatever you want with your whiskey. Just drink it and have fun. Thanks for joining. Boom. Hi. Drink whiskey responsibly.